This is a CineD Gear News video.
Welcome everybody to this CineD virtual show interview with Tama from Creamsource. How are you, Tama?
Very well, thanks, Nino. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I mean, you guys recently released a new light, the Vortex8. But before we talk about that light, maybe you can give us a little bit of a backstory on where you came from, where the company came from, and what you guys are actually doing.
Yeah, thank you. So personally, I've been in the film industry for my entire working career. I grew up next to a cinematographer in New Zealand who just happened to be one of the sort of higher ranking cinematographers, I suppose, at the time. A really great guy called Alan Bollinger, and he introduced me into the scene of special effects and animatronics and this kind of thing that was happening, because at the time I really wanted to build robots. My passion was robot building ever since I was around sort of 5 or 6 years old. So I was constantly building stuff in the shed, and he saw this. And he said, well, maybe you can try, sort of something in the animatronics field, and started to help me get contacts with the Weta workshop at the time, which when I first went and saw them when I was about 14 years old, I think they were about 12 people. So it was a very small company, very personable. They let me in through this tiny door in the back fence. And I went and saw all of the...
A hobbit door, I presume.
It was almost a hobbit door. Well, no, it was a small red door next to the loading dock, I still remember. And it was very... it was really a family business at that stage. It was well before things had sort of kicked off for them with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, etc. I later went to work for them when I was about 17, and in the mechanism department, and went straight to work trying to help them build animatronics and rigs and gore and injury, and later also motion capture. Worked also with the crew doing the Gollum mocap shoot and those kind of things. And also spent quite a bit of time on set, so I got to really see, full-scale, full-blown Hollywood-style production, but done in New Zealand. So it was quite a mind bender for a first project and my first sort of 3 years in the industry. From there moved to Sydney, Australia, and started working with some of the same crew that I met in New Zealand, working in the mocap unit, and we started work on the Happy Feet film with George Miller. That ran for a few years, and in the course of that I designed and built a lighting system for them, which was LEDs, because back in 2001, 2002, LEDs were not really a big thing at all. There was a high power LED company at the time, only a couple of them in the world. This one was called LumaLEDs, and they were making these really high power, 1 watt or 2 watt LED chips, which just seemed colossal at the time, and it was. The color was absolutely horrible, but they did the job in such a great, efficient way, and we could really control the angle of the beam and lens them right in, and that made our mocap volume much more efficient, because we weren't getting lots of blown lamps and these kind of things. That would always slow down our production, because we'd always have to recalibrate the entire volume of 60 cameras. From there, that sort of really sparked my interest again in LEDs, which I've sort of been interested in since being a kid. And I decided, on the requests of some gaffers and some friends in the industry, to start trying to build LED fixtures. more centered around film.
Very cool. So that's actually quite a story you have there. I mean, I don't think a lot of manufacturers or CEO of lighting companies are actually that experienced with the light themselves. Very often you have business people at the helm. So it's nice to hear that you actually, you come from, from the ground up kind of to what you do now. So, I mean, LED technology has evolved like crazy over the last 15 years since you got started with your company. And now pretty much every company makes, the typical 1x1 and these typical shapes that we see everywhere. Where do you think, your newest product, for example, where do you think the biggest differentiating factor is to the other stuff there out on the market?
There's a couple of really key points. I think, firstly, we've taken that original concept of wanting to build as much as we could directly into the head. So it has the power supply is built right in. There's only one cable that you actually need for operation, and that's either mains or a DC cable if you want to run it from battery. So everything integrated, waterproofing of the unit, the IP65 sort of heavy weather rating is really important to us. We've been building water-resistant products since our first one was actually the Creamsource Sky that we launched in 2014. So we've been building water-resistant products for a while, and that was actually the original intent with the first Doppio that we built was, we always wanted to move it towards this water-resistant sort of architecture base, so that's always been sort of on the roadmap. We just were not technically able to do it when we brought the Doppio out. And so it feels like finally with the Vortex, we've been able to get all of this technology that we always really wanted to cram into the fixture in there. The other important aspect of it really is the throw and the punch of this fixture. There's not many companies, I guess, making sort of this 2x1 fixture which actually has a significant projected beam of this sort. At 20 degrees, this is narrower than, I guess, most panels, which then of course can be softened back and diffused out to the sort of desired level if you need to get close and do beauty work, or you want to sort of put it into a larger diffuser of some kind.
That's a very good point, I think, because one of the issues with a lot of LED lights are that they are actually too soft, because you can't make a soft light harder, but you can always make a hard light soft. So that's actually a very good point. How do you achieve that? Are there kind of lenses on top of the panel?
Yeah, so there's small individual clusters of LEDs, and then we lens them through a precision optic, and this generates the beam. So we've got clusters of red, green, blue, and white, all stuck really close together, and then they all get mixed through a single optic. And there's an array of these optics on the front of the unit.
I mean, you mentioned also the waterproofing. I think that's something that raised my eyebrows, because a lot of the lights that I've been using are actually like you wouldn't want to have them stand out in the rain, especially since LED stuff came along. It's really become a problem, I think, because a lot of the older lights were just fine in some drizzle rain, but with LEDs. It's problematic. How do you come up with, or how does it work? How do you make a light waterproof?
Yeah, great question. There's a number of layers that we have. So first of all, you'll notice that we're taking a bit of a departure from our traditional format of the sort of aluminium shell that you'll see on something like the SpaceX here, but we have the technopolymer back, which allows us this sort of really lightweight structure, which is extremely strong and durable, but also a really great set of key sealing features and O-rings, specially made O-rings and gaskets, which seal all of the electronics from the weather.
Talking about waterproofing, do you want to demonstrate how it works or if it works?
Yeah, let's check it, shall we?
Let's do it. So you're pretending that it's raining indoors now.
So I'm pretending with my nice little little trash bucket of water here.
Oh my God. Who's gonna clean the floor? Who's gonna wipe up all this?
Luckily, I've got it too.
Wow, that's amazing. That's something, like the first second you're like, oh my God, don't do it. And then, yeah, it works. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I rarely see a manufacturer actually doing that to any of their products.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys also have an app to control the light, right?
Actually, we don't have an app for it yet. It's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, I mean, like everything needs to have an app these days. I have a cat's toy that has an app. I guess that's the new thing. But in practice, yeah, I mean, I think DMX control is the most important thing, of course, to connect all the lights together. In terms of color temperature, I think you guys have quite a big range of color temperature that this light is able to produce, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can go 2200 up to 15,000 Kelvin. So, yeah, pretty broad range of CCT. And that may be further expanded in the future depending on, firmware updates, etc.
Okay, and obviously, as we see in your background, it's an RGBW light.
It's actually RGBW. We don't have two Ws, but yes, RGBW, and it produces a fairly broad gamut, I would say. So you've got quite a decent large color space to play in, and we also provide calibrated color space in the form of XY coordinates. So if you want to match it with anything else that you have, it's getting easier to get a meter which can measure XY coordinates, and then you simply punch these coordinates in and you'll get a fairly close match.
So LED lights traditionally, over the first couple of years were not very strong. Obviously, usually on big sets, we were still using hot lights for all kinds of things, HMIs and all that, and it's slowly changing. Now this light, the Vortex8, has quite a big punch. Where do you see this, where do you see a real use case for that?
So I guess in situations where you're trying to craft a deeper look, if you're trying to create, highlights and shadows and really play with the mix of light across your scene, and you want a sort of a broader contrast palette, as it were, then a unit like the Vortex8 is great for that, because you can pick out and highlight elements in your scene more easily with greater flexibility.
In terms of powering, I mean, is it possible to power this light with batteries?
It is indeed, yeah. It's a 48 volts input. So there's some companies who are building 48 volt inverters if you want to go up from existing camera batteries, or 28 volt, or these kind of things. At 650 watts though, it's a fairly hefty draw on anything that's not like a larger block. So,
well, it will run for 20 minutes or something, maybe with a very big battery.
Yeah, so 800 watt hour bricks and and above, I think, are probably the go with something with this kind of load.
Very cool. So who do you think are your main kind of customers for that kind of fixture? Where do you see this light used most? Is it feature films? Is it smaller independent productions? I mean, also, of course, a question about pricing. or is it rental houses? Where do you think this will, perform the most?
Actually, I thought when we were building it that it would be oriented quite well towards rental houses. Obviously, everybody in the rentals market at the moment is having a bit of a tough time, but looking forward, I mean, I'm seeing that we're actually getting a lot of pickup from individual gaffers. Smaller rental companies, surprisingly, are doing better than larger rental companies, I'd say, just in the general scope of things, which is a great nod to the independent creator movement and the way that sort of people are able to continue making content even in these interesting times. So I think there's actually quite a lot of scope in that market right at this point in time. And I'd say moving forward, as the feature film market becomes a little more healthy, we're going to see greater and greater pickup there. I mean, that's really our traditional market, what's really been our home for a long time. So I would expect that we get really good pickup in the feature film sort of segment with the rental companies, etc. Over time. But it's interesting to see the sort of more independent picture-oriented workflow gravitating towards an instrument like this, which can be used in challenging environments and is very versatile due to the nature of the beam and the nature of the kind of accessories you can put on it. So I'm, I guess I'd say I'm hopeful that it sort of leads us more into that market. Although, really time will tell.
So let's talk about riggability. I mean, obviously a lot of those lights are used on bigger sets where it's important to rig those up on ceilings or whatever, on studios. How riggable is the Vortex8?
So the Vortex8 has a quick release yoke system, and it also has an 8-point rigging system on the corners. So on every corner of this fixture, there's a threaded insert which allows you to either screw in a hard mounting rigging point, like this, for example. There's a 3/8 threaded spigot that you can simply screw into and tie off on, or when you have a rigging system coming for it, which will allow you to, in a toolless fashion, build a wall of fixtures. So, and really important for applications where you quickly want to rig up a large number of units and sort of save all your rigging time and personnel for other parts of the project.
Last but not least, tell me about availability of the Vortex8 and what's the suggested retail pricing.
So Vortex8, we actually extended our initial run because our first run sold through completely. So we've extended our run out, and now it looks like availability on new orders will be from September or October from this point forward. So and pricing is $4,999 US. Not exactly sure what the euro list price is, but
very cool. Thank you so much, Tama, for this interview. It was really interesting. Actually, I didn't tell our viewers, but I'm catching you in China. So
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess you're next to your factory or something.
Yeah, actually, I'm in my factory. So yeah.
All right. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to probably reviewing this light at some point. And yeah. And thanks thank you. And thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD.com for a lot more news and a lot more gear news interviews like this one. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.